them into doing it. Again, I don't think we would get the kind of guys that, if you're looking for sort of like guys. I mean, I don't know. Do you guys sort of like? I like guys. Like, not. I don't know. I don't find androgyny appealing. And so, I used to give these talks called Feminine Magnetic Power, and I actually got in a fight with one guy who said he had feminine magnetic power and he wanted to access his feminine side. And I was like, no, I will not help you with that. Nobody wants you to access your feminine side. Like, go learn to change the oil in your truck. So, guys, right? We want guys. So what is happening, though, is, I know Steve is doing some of this, and I have other guy friends who are talking about how do we get guys together and talk about how do we go after the wives we want. And that includes pursuing women. But they don't do it sitting in a circle talking about their feelings. I think they're going to build and paint stuff. So while they talk about it. And I think that's good. Men, from what I don't profess to know much of anything about men, sort of broadly speaking. But the guys I know, my brothers, my husband, my dad, are actually pretty good at seeing what they want and going after it. And so, again, maybe it comes back to if the train doesn't stop at your station, it's not your train. If a guy hasn't pursued you, maybe your guy hasn't shown up yet. You hear a lot of women talk about like, well, maybe he's shy. If you have a strong person, if you have at all a living, breathing personality, you want a guy who's strong enough to ask you out. Like that, at sort of a bare minimum. And I'm not saying that, asking you out is the worst thing in the world. I've certainly done my share of it. And I did make it clear on several occasions with Steve, like, hey, might be interested. Like, so it's not that there aren't things you do to sort of signal reciprocal interest. But if you've been throwing those signals out for a while and they're never coming back at you, it's not your train. Just let it go. Because you don't want the wrong train on your track, blocking things coming. Like you've been on the T. When it gets stuck and you can't get to the station, the worst thing in the world is to have the right guy come along and you're dating Mr. Wrong. So, yeah, what was the question? Oh, are the men being talked to? Sorry, I lost it there. Pray for the men. And maybe it's even easier, as we think about being women who like men and are for men and supporting them. Maybe in addition to praying for your future husband, pray for the men you know. Or pray for men generally. Pray for the men in our church. Pray for the men who you know are not your husband. For them to be all they can be. Sounds like is it the Marines? Maybe don't pray for them to join the Marines. But yeah, like there's a way in which even with our prayer life we can be supporting men. Because even as, when Steve and I first got married, he started leading a group of guys who wanted to explore the Bible and what it meant to follow Jesus as men. And I think it was pretty important to me. It was a big time commitment out of our new marriage, and that was time we were not cuddling on the couch. And I really had to have God recalibrate my attitude and say, like, no, this is a good thing. This is good for my husband. It makes him a better man. It makes these guys better. And so I benefit from this, this sacrifice of cuddle time. And so I would try to pray I didn't know most of the men in the group, but I just pray, like, let that group go well, God. I pray you answer their prayers. I pray these guys find this time really powerful and that you be transforming their lives. And I don't know, I think, they're good guys now, and I think good things came of it. So, okay. We're at 4 minutes, so. What's my role in the whole dating process? What's the balance to being sought after and pursued and to making yourself available? Oh, that is such a good question, and I have so failed at this miserably. I would say maybe prayer is the most powerful thing you can do. Again, because negotiating this is so tricky. I'm not sure there's a rule because we're all different. If we think of this idea that we talk about a lot here at the church, which is kind of if Jesus is in the center, we're all coming at him from different, and all of our paths are going to look different, and what we encounter, and the challenges, and the miracles, and the blessings. But the commonality is that we're all saying, like, hey, I think Jesus has the good stuff I want in life. Like, the good life is found in calibrating towards Jesus. So if part of that good life is an awesome husband and a rockin' marriage, I think each of those paths is going to look different. And, if we got together in 10 years and talked about how did you meet your husband, all of our stories would be different. And some of us would have been like, oh, I don't know, this guy came up out of the blue and asked me out. And some of us would say, he didn't realize it. I was gently flirting with him for 2 years. I mean, I don't wish that on any of you. May that not happen for any of us. But yeah, I do think I have always prayed in every situation, but especially on this one, God, close any door that is not the one you're opening for me, and open the one. And don't let me stand there pounding on a door that you have closed. But also, I prayed actively for when my husband came along for him to pursue me. And he did. I mean, he didn't chase me across the gym or anything when our church met in a gym, but he was pretty intentional about asking me out. And that was super helpful. And so absolutely pray for that. And again, consider the fact that if you have your eye on someone and you've, to your mind, sort of suggested things that feel flirty, and if you've opened doors and he just stares at you blankly, it's probably not your train. And so move on, and maybe he'll move after you. That's always a possibility. But move on just thinking okay, I don't want to be hanging out staring at Mr. Wrong when Mr. Right comes along. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to save the rest of these for next time because I want to pray about something specific, but I also want to say, were there any questions based on anything we talked about tonight?
Yeah. When something you said just then spurs something I thought about with another question. I don't know how to tie it all together, but basically, when you are being reciprocal and you're and you're opening a door and he is answering that, but then what happens if you get to a point where you feel like you've turned the heat up too much? What do you do at that point? You still like the guy, you want to go forward with it, but you're concerned that maybe you turned the heat up too much. What would you do?
Sure. This is where I think Jesus helped me out so much. The great thing about faith in Jesus is that you always have the recalibrate option. Whether you've been mean to your mother, or, whatever, wherever you think, wow, I maybe didn't do that right, you can always go back and say, Jesus, could you help me fix what needs to be fixed? Help me recalibrate. And so I think in this situation, I would pray, okay, Jesus, what would be, if you think of it like a thermostat, what would be an appropriate temperature to set this at? And I would kind of douse it in prayer. And one of the things that's really helpful is to say, could you put me and the guy on the same page? Because I think that's one of the things God does, is he'll actually speak to both of you. So it's not this big contentious, oh, I thought this, and da-da-da-da, and what, you don't like me anymore, and because you want to stay out of that drama, what does this mean, or ick.